And this has been Josa Genpo's year. He's had many rites of passage. Shuhei Tokido was very moving. He's moving on to be Shuso here shortly, but today was a very important one. Today, Josa captured his first temple bat and released him out into the wild. So I said, I'm going to transmit this Dharma wisdom of bat catching, likely because I'm getting a little too old to be getting up on ladders, catching bats and running and throwing them outside. But he did an exceptional job. So I was going to invite the bat to service, but I didn't think it would work out too well. So speaking of turning points, there's a big turning point that's been on my heart lately. It took place in the Platform Sūtra. It's in a way that we all remember. We've studied the Platform Sūtra before. It's a coming of age and the public ministry of the Sixth Zen Ancestor, Daikan Enō, also known as Huineng. But within it is embedded the story of a contest. There's a poem on a wall. There's some poor illiterate laborer who saw more clearly than the other monks who were well trained around him. So at the time of the Platform Sutra's origination, Zen was still finding its shape in China. And the fifth patriarch, or ancestor, Hungzhen, was aging. And he had trained a large community. And it was all-inclusive. He had monks, lay people, he had students from different walks of life. And he hadn't yet named a successor. The organization was pretty successful. So the robe and the bowl of Bodhidharma were still being passed generation to generation at this point. We're not too far beyond that. And he had these symbols of Zen transmission, and he was trying to figure out who was going to get him next. And so rather than choosing by rank, which was one common way to do that in the day, he decided to call for a test. I think in the spirit of Bodhidharma, right? Because he did the same thing. He had all these student successors, and he calls 5 of them together and goes, one of you is going to get Dharma transmission. You don't know how long they've been studying, right? 20 years, let's say. And you're going to get it based on answering a question. Right? You can imagine all those years of training now coming to the fore, coming to the pinnacle, right? And so instead, he does it by saying, I want you all to write me a gatha. I want you to write me a verse, if you want to enter, that expresses your understanding of the great matter. And if someone shows that they've truly seen through the veneer to their original nature, I'll transmit the bowl, the robe, and the Dharma to them. So there was quite a stir. Right? Many, many disciples, one robe, one bowl. But despite their training and their practice and their years of monastic life, people were hesitant to step forward. Isn't that interesting? Doesn't we see that sometimes in our own practice? All of you have put your hearts and your ardor into the practice. But sometimes when the challenge comes right before us, we're often tempted to shrink. Yeah. But the head monk, who thought, frankly, he was in line just based on order of rank, figured, well, I guess I'd better enter this contest. Yeah, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it with my name attached to it, just in case it isn't good. Boy, the lack of confidence, right? So he waits until nightfall, and by lantern light, he creeps to the wall of the south corridor, and he writes on the wall, the body is a Bodhi tree. The mind is like a standing mirror. Always try to keep it clean. Don't let it gather dust. And that's a pretty polished and balanced verse. Right? And it may even be in line with what the northern schools thought, or mainstream Mahayana thought was at the time, that practice is a lifelong effort of purifying the mind, removing the dust of delusion so we can see the light of awakening. So when the abbot read it the next morning, he praised it. He ordered incense to be burned in front of it. Monks were told, hey, you do well. to practice and memorize this verse, which isn't false. They had actually planned to paint this painting on the corridor, and they even hired a local artisan to do it, and they canceled it. They said, let's just keep this verse in place. And I think at the time, a lot of the monks thought it was the winning verse. The abbot, by saying it was a good verse, didn't make any commitments to transmit based on the quality of the verse, but it certainly is a way that points. It has a direct arrow pointing to the cliff that we have to step off of, but it doesn't necessarily encourage one to step off of the cliff. But then there's a twist in the plot. The back of the monastery, working in the rice mill, was Huineng. We call him Daikan Enō. He was a poor layman from the south. He was illiterate. He had no formal education. He had no training in scripture. But 8 months earlier, he heard a single line from the Diamond Sutra. And it opened his heart. And in asking around, he found, where could I learn more about this? He found a temple he could go to, a monastery he could go to learn more. But he had to travel more than a month in horrible clothing and privation to get to the monastery where he was standing. And when he arrived, he wasn't given a seat in the meditation hall. He was told, quite literally, to pound rice. He was put out behind the temple and told to pound rice. Some people see this as Hungzhen being discriminatory. There's actually an exchange that comes between the two that insinuates that he was discriminating against him because he was poor and illiterate. I happen to think that Hungzhen saw a lot of potential in this monk, and he also saw a lot of striation or stratification going on in the zendo, and he didn't want to throw him into that environment, because in that environment, he would have just fallen in line with the other monks, and once they thought they knew something, they would have been stuck. He would have been stuck with them too. Sometimes we just have to work. Sometimes we just have to do what's in front of us. The training, right, doesn't just take the form of these koans we're passing. It takes the form of the drudgery and the commute and all the other things. So keep that in mind. But a novice monk passed by the mill one day where he was pounding rice, and he was reciting Shinzu's verse. And Enō heard it and said, "This verse shows small insight. I'd like to offer one." And so he asked the monk to take him to the wall where that verse was written. And he can't write, right? So he asked the monk to write on the wall for him. Bodhi doesn't have any mere trees. This mirror doesn't have a stand. Our Buddha nature is forever pure. Where did you get this dust? The last line, where'd you get this dust? You still hear that bell ringing clearly through the ages to right here, right now. In a way, this is beyond being clever or poetic. He's pointing directly to the Great Awakening. But that question still is there. Where'd you get this dust? The question kind of undoes the whole head monk's project or notion of where he was pointing. It dissolves the mirror he was trying to keep clean. It cuts through the assumption that awakening is something we achieve over time by perfecting ourselves. Daikan Enō is not just saying, don't polish the mirror, he's saying, there never was a mirror in the first place. Now Hongren sees this, and he comes to the rice mill that night at the third watch and summons Enō to come sit with him. And there he expounds the Diamond Sutra even more. And then he hands him the robe and the bowl in secret. And because he knows that there's no way that the other monks are going to accept this illiterate southerner, this outsider, as the next temple leader, he tells Huineng to flee, to take this Dharma elsewhere and spread it. So Daikan Enō slips into the night carrying nothing but a little bit of rice and the robe and the bowl. Great story, yeah? So what? Most of us, whether we've been practicing for 5 days, or 5 years, or 15 or 20 years, carry a little bit of that head monk spirit inside. It's something we have to examine closely. We polish, we strive, we meditate with a sort of spiritual ambition to be more peaceful, to be more clear, to be more enlightened, to become the right kind of person, the right kind of practitioner. Just polishing the mirror, yeah? I want to say that that's completely wrong. Ongren honored the verse, remember? He had incense burned before it. And he said it would help deluded people. There's no doubt. I think this is the basis, to a large extent, of some of our modern psychology, making ourselves better. But it's not the whole story. It's preparatory. What Daikan Enō reveals is that truth goes beyond technique. Awakening is not some form or place that's different or distinct. It's a recognition of what's already true. Your Buddha nature is not something that you have to acquire. It's not something you have to construct. It's not something that's hidden deep down under years of bad karma. It's not something we refine completely through discipline. It's pure and unconditioned. It's right here before the first thought, before the first breath. It's already pure. It's already complete. And this is why Daikan Enō's verse begins by standing in sharp contrast to the head monks. There is no tree, no mirror, nothing to clean, no dust. The project of self-perfection collapses. And what arises in its place when you're willing to do that? What arises in its place? Just that right there. Just that. That mind of curiosity, that mind of wonder, that place of quiet presence, of curiosity. This is the heart of Zen. It's not found in hierarchy or winning or spiritual competition. Just responding to what is. But it's important to remember that even the flawed poem, even the incomplete view, is a part of the way as well. Yeah? And that's why we do don robes and hold ranks and celebrate when we go through rites of passage. Yeah? But don't get too hung up, so hung up there, that you fail to see the pearl that's right in your possession today. The teaching's already here. There's nothing you need to clean. There's nothing you need to gain or get rid of. Just ask yourself, when your mind gets scattered in that way, where'd you get this dust? The truth is not in the mirror. It's seeing beyond the mirror. That's what Daikan Enō saw. And he ran into the mountains not to escape the world, but to actually take the teachings out into the world. And not just to wait until the world was ready to receive it, but to act in such a way that would bring the world to that place of readiness. So if you're wondering when the world will be ready to receive it, today is the day. Today is the day.